Thank you. Co-chair now recognizes Senator Toomey of Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'm glad to be following Senator Kerry, and I want to underscore my agreement with him and Senator Portman on how important it is that we really make every effort to do something substantial on the tax reform side. This is the most pro-growth thing we can do, is to fundamentally reform our tax code. It is a way to generate very substantial revenue while lowering marginal tax rates. That creates jobs. That helps reduce our deficit problem. It can enhance fairness, which we desperately need to do. So I appreciate your testimony. I'm glad we're focusing on this. I wanted to follow up a little bit on the vein that Senator Kerry was just discussing. You know, tax expenditures justifiably get a bad name because so many of them are, in my view, egregious flaws in the code, especially those that are narrowly targeted and have a distorting impact. But not all tax expenditures, not everything that we describe as tax expenditures meets that description. The first one on the list here on Table 5 is the deferral of active income, right? This reflects, of course, the fact that we choose not to tax at the time that it's earned income that is earned by overseas subsidiaries. If you looked at this as number one on the list and the biggest number by far on the list, you could superficially at a quick glance suggest, well, maybe this is a good source of revenue. But in fact, I would argue that our current system puts us at a competitive disadvantage because despite whatever number there is on this form, we tax foreign income when it's brought home to a much larger degree than most of our competitors. Isn't that true?
That's correct, sir.
So if we were to actually tax it at the time that it's earned, we would be taking the competitive disadvantage we have now and making it worse, right?
You'd be creating a higher tax rate on the total income of the U.S. corporation.
Well, exactly, and we would be increasing the disparity, the difference between that tax rate that we charge on overseas income and that which our competitors charge.
To the extent that the competitors in lower tax locations.
Which most are.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things well, I just think we should be very conscious of the fact that reducing tax expenditures, it matters very much which ones and how we were to go about doing it. I'm in favor of moving in the direction of a territorial system, and I think of a lot of Pennsylvania companies, whether it's U.S. Steel or Heinz or Air Products and Chemicals, companies that have substantial operations overseas. They exist to serve local markets overseas. And what I would hate to see us do is a move in a direction that creates an even greater incentive than there already is to have corporate headquarters somewhere else, because that costs us jobs. It costs us a lot of good jobs. So my preference would be that we move in the direction of a more territorial system. I'd like to get back to another line of question that Senator Portman raised, and that's how your methodology quantifies the feedback of variations in policy. So as I understood you, you acknowledge that personal incentives affect behavior. And so you used an example of a reduction in the payroll tax might create an incentive for someone to enter the workforce because their after-tax earnings would be that much higher. Of course, that's true of any reduction in marginal income tax rates, payroll, or ordinary income.
That's correct, sir.
And so my question is, when you analyze something like that, do you actually attempt to quantify the number of people who would enter the workforce in response to that greater incentive to work?
When we undertake our macroeconomic analysis, we report employment effects. Now, the employment effects are usually in terms of hours of work, which you can then loosely translate into numbers of individuals, but hours can also be overtime by currently employed individuals.
Okay, so you acknowledge that. Do you also then, in your calculation, attribute a new source of revenue from these new workers, the fact that they are paying payroll tax at a somewhat lower rate perhaps, but they're paying
well,
tax,
again,
and they
Senator,
didn't before.
This goes to the point that we've broached a couple of times. Our macroeconomic analysis that we've been undertaking for about a decade is geared at providing supplemental information to the members of Congress relating to tax policy changes that they're considering. And so what we routinely report are changes in gross domestic product, changes in employment, changes in investment, and we also report what this could mean in terms of feedback effects on revenues, because a general premise is if national income grows, the tax base will grow, and so there will be more income subject to tax. So in very loose terms, the answer to your question is yes. This is not reported for budget scorekeeping purposes or for House or Senate rule scorekeeping purposes, points of order, and the like.
Okay, I see I'm running out of time, but I just want to underscore. I think this is a problem with the scorekeeping methodology. I mean, your analysis, you acknowledge that a reduction in a marginal income tax rate does not have a linear impact in reducing revenue because of the positive feedback effect that offsets at least some of that, but yet we don't capture that, we don't quantify that, as I understand you to describe your process of scoring a given change in tax policy.
The macroeconomic analysis we do is not part of scoring for congressional scorekeeping and rule purposes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Co-chair now.